Hello music lovers, how you guys doing out there? Thanks so much for dropping by, and if you're brand new to this channel, just know that I love talking about music, a lot of rock related stuff from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and it could be tied in with current events, or it could be just interesting stories from the past. And who knows, maybe my next video will be about polka. I don't know, we'll see. However, this video is about one of my all-time favorite bands, Yes. And if you're a Yes fan, you know that it could be a bit bittersweet over the past 10 or so years. A lot of members coming in and out of the band, lineup changes. And I'm not going to go through all the stuff that I talked about in my last video. Check that out, my State of the Onion address. It's hard to believe it's been almost a year since I did this video, but I'll throw a link up to it also in the description below. But yeah, there's been a lot of talk about maybe Yes reuniting in some way for their 50th anniversary in some way, maybe even Jon Anderson rejoining Yes or having some kind of a reunion tour. And then what about this other band, ARW, with Rick Wakeman and Jon Anderson and Trevor Rabin? That was something that went on for a couple of years, and that's gone silent. And you know what I think? I think that there's a better shot of Dennis DeYoung rejoining Styx than there is of Jon Anderson getting back with Yes. And it's pretty sad. You know, I think there's a lot of similarities between Yes and Styx, not only in how they've treated their former founding lead singers, but also the guys that are going on, like Tommy Shaw and Steve Howe, and you know, what this means for them going forward without their former leaders. And so we're going to talk about that. As a matter of fact, this video was a request. Got this from David Carlin. He says, could you also please cover some of the recent comments by Steve on how a reunion with Jon Anderson is impossible? All right, so in this video, I'm going to give you my top 5 reasons why I don't think you can look forward to any kind of Yes reunion, whether it be something like they did back in 1991 for the Union album and tour, or even something like ARW, okay? Here we go. Reason number 5. Quite simply, Chris Squire is gone. Now, you may be thinking, well, yeah, Chris Squire is gone, but what's to stop the surviving members like Jon Anderson and Rick Wakeman and Steve Howe getting together under the Yes banner and doing something? Here's the problem. Not only was Chris Squire a groundbreaking bass player and, you know, provided really just awesome backing vocals to the Yes classics, but he was the mediator. Chris Squire made things happen. You know, he's the one that talked Rick Wakeman into joining Yes. You know, he's the one that called Rick when he had this decision to make. You know, should he join David Bowie and his Spiders from Mars band, or should he join Yes? Squire infamously called Wakeman at like 3 in the morning begging him to join Yes. And Rick Wakeman was like, you know, Chris, you know, do you know what time it is? And Squire was like, well, let me go see. And Rick was like, no, no, no. Do you realize what time it is? You know, that's just Chris Squire. He was the guy that not only brought Rick into the band when he first joined, but he also got Rick back into the band for the Going for the One album after Rick had left, and he came back again in 1977. He was also instrumental in talking Trevor Horn and the Buggles into joining Yes. Chris Squire was the guy that talked Jon Anderson into rejoining Yes for the 90125 album. And you could say, yeah, well, Chris Squire is also the guy that left Jon Anderson behind. That's true. But Chris Squire, if anybody was going to get everybody on the same page or on the same stage, whether it be Jon Anderson, Trevor Rabin, Rick Wakeman, whoever, Chris Squire was the guy to do it. He was the go-between. He was the conduit. And without him, you're not likely to have any kind of reunion. You know, this is number 5 on my list, but it very well could be number 1. Now, here's reason number 4. Rick Wakeman may be done touring after 2022. That's right. In a recent interview, Rick Wakeman talked about how he doesn't want to go out and perform live if he can't perform up to a certain standard. This is what he had to say. He says, I've been diagnosed with arthritis in both my hands. It's controllable at the moment. I always said that I never want to walk on stage and not play to the standard I want to. I don't want anyone to applaud anything I do because of what I used to do. So there comes a time to stop. I reckon I have until probably the beginning to the end of 2022, and then I think I won't be able to do it anymore. I'll still be able to play, but not up to the standard live that I do now. So yeah, Rick's attitude reminds me of the same one that Neil Peart of Rush had when it came to his retirement, you know, and he compared himself to an athlete taking himself out of the game when he knew that he could no longer contribute the way that he used to and was no longer at the top of his game. And I have a lot of respect for that. But what this ultimately means is that the window of opportunity for Yes having any kind of a reunion with Rick, we got about another year, year and a half maybe, before that window is closed. And as for Yes doing any kind of a reunion tour, like they did back in 1991, Rick doesn't think it's possible. This is what he had to say about that. He said, "What would be achieved by everyone getting together and trying to do a reunion? We wouldn't achieve anything. What would you play? There's no new great material since the Union tour. There is nothing that has been recorded from any of the Yes camps where you can go, great, we can introduce that now. It will be the same classic stuff, really. If you were going to write something, how on earth would you do it with so many people? It would be really, really difficult." Now look, Rick's got a point here. You know, what has been the great Yes material over the past 30 years that the band would need to play? Now I know that's probably opening up a can of worms. Yeah, sure, there may be some good songs here and there, but when was the last great Yes album? For me, I'd have to go back to 90125. You know, if you want to dig out the best Yes, it was the stuff they did in the 70s and 90125. That's the heart of the best of Yes. And even on the whole Union tour, they had a new album. They had the Union album. As lopsided as that album was, they had 3 brand new songs that they could play on that tour. If they went out now, they'd have nothing new. They would have nothing new over the past 30 years that's worth playing, and they'd just be rehashing the past. Plus, you wouldn't have certain members because they're gone. What is the point? That's what Rick is saying, and I would have to agree. Let me know what you think about that. All right, before we get to reason number 3, how about we do a quick round of topographic trivia? All right, so who did Jon Anderson fail to recognize when speaking with this person during his stay at a hotel in Brooklyn, New York for Yes's 2017 Hall of Fame induction ceremony? Was it A, Geddy Lee of Rush? Was it B, John Davison, the current lead singer of Yes? Or C, Jeff Downes, the current keyboardist in Yes? The answer is B, John Davison, the current singer in Yes. That's right. You have to keep in mind that when Yes was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2017, Yes was divided into 2 different camps. You had Yes Official and you had ARW with Rick Wakeman, Jon Anderson, and Trevor Rabin, both active bands. And so the question was posed to Jon, how did you guys all get along at the ceremony? And this is what Jon had to say. He said, "We kept to ourselves. Nobody came over to say hi from the band. Except later on, somebody was a little bit tipsy and came over and started talking to me, and I didn't know who it was. Steve was dodging me all the time. John Davison was the guy I didn't recognize." Well, this definitely shows that Jon Anderson doesn't keep up too much with the current lineup of Yes. Definitely not, staying up late at night watching videos of John Davison lead his former band. Otherwise, he would have recognized him. Makes me wonder if when Lou Gramm of Foreigner first met his replacement, Kelly Hansen, if he thought he was talking to Steven Tyler. I don't know. What do you think? Okay, on to reason number 3. Trevor Rabin isn't interested. That's right, the reason why Anderson, Rabin, and Wakeman, otherwise known as ARW, crumbled was because, well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, Trevor Rabin didn't like the fact that it became Yes featuring ARW. That was something that management came up with after they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Trevor Rabin never wanted to do anything with Yes. He just wanted to work with Jon Anderson and Rick Wakeman before they fucking croaked. All right, so he did that. He went on tour with them for a couple of years. He really wanted to create something new. After all, that's what Rabin's been doing over the past 30 years or so since he left Yes. He's been doing soundtracks. He loves to create. He wanted to make something brand new with Rick Wakeman and Jon Anderson, but they just couldn't get on the same page. And so this is what Rabin had to say when asked if there was anything with ARW planned. This is what he had to say. None at all. It's definitely over. We had a splendid time and it was a lot of fun, but now it's over. The problem is that we all live in different places around the world. So logistically, it's so hard to carry on. I would never say never, but it's certainly nothing I'm planning to do in the near future. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Trevor Rabin, if he doesn't want to get back together with ARW and do anything there, he sure as shit doesn't want to do anything with Steve Howe and do any kind of union-related album or performance. That's not going to happen. They infamously didn't get along very, very well 30 years ago on that tour. A lot of bad vibes. I remember hearing a story about how they offered Steve Howe the guitar solo in Owner of a Lonely Heart, but not only did Steve not want to do it, he didn't even want to be on stage when they performed that song. And I just get the feeling from interviews with Steve, including the one that I did with him, which I'll put a link up to, he kind of resented Trevor Rabin for taking his place in the 80s. I think he didn't like the fact that Yes went on without him, and he didn't like the Yes that he was hearing. He didn't feel that Trevor Rabin carried on the traditions that he brought in, and Peter Banks, and I talked about this in my Steve Howe interview. It's like, you know, Trevor Rabin didn't ask to be in Yes. That's what it turned into. He didn't have to carry on anything from anybody. And, you know, it's kind of unfair. I think that Steve's had a shitty attitude towards Trevor. They just do not get along. So I would not expect that to happen at all. This is what Rick Wakeman had to say about any kind of union tour happening. He said, I would give the first rehearsal half an hour before somebody walked out. It would happen before we even decided what to play or how to play. I think it would be difficult. So if you really read between the lines here, I think Rick is saying, you know, Steve and Trevor didn't get along very well. They're the only two that I've ever heard any stories about from that union tour not getting along. Let me know what you think about that. Here is reason number 2 why you're not likely to see a Yes reunion, and that is Bill Bruford is retired. Yeah, you have to keep in mind that Yes has only had 2 drummers. You have Bill Bruford, and he was replaced with Alan White for the Close to the Edge tour, and he remains the band's primary drummer, although lately he's had some health issues, some issues with his back and everything. He hasn't been able to perform anything close to the way that he used to. As a matter of fact, Alan White has pretty much been reduced to a guest appearance at Yes concerts now. It's very, very sad what's happened with Alan White. I showed this footage in another video. This is Alan performing The Gates of Delirium just last year. And you can really tell that you know, he's playing secondary to Jay Shellen, who now is the primary drummer in Yes. And it's just very sad to see what's happened to Alan. So, you know, if there was any kind of reunion tour with the surviving members, you would have to get an outside drummer. It wouldn't be like it was 30 years ago where everybody involved was either a founding member or part of the classic lineup. It just wouldn't be the same. And, you know, Bill Bruford's one of these guys, kind of like Rick Wakeman and Neil Peart, wanted to take himself out of the game while he was still at the top. And he had nothing more to prove. And in a recent interview, he was asked how long it's been since he's played the drums, and this is what he said. He said, 10 years ago, no, I don't play anymore. And a lot of people seem to find that weird, but I don't find that strange at all. Yeah, and you know, it's really a shame because they could do another Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe type project, but without Bruford, that's not possible. All right, so it's time for my number 1 reason why I don't believe Yes will be getting back together with its former members anytime soon, and that is because Steve Howe says that it's unthinkable. That's right. In a recent interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Steve Howe did not offer Yes fans any hope that there would be a reunion with the former lead singer Jon Anderson. This is what he had to say. He said, I don't think fans should stay up late nights worrying about a reunion. There's just too much space out there between people. To be in a band together or even to do another tour like 1991's Union is completely unthinkable. Yes is about people who love working together and can. The word can carries the whole story. That means compatibility and the same awareness about what we want to do. And I think we passed that point a long time ago. So I think that Steve Howe is just trying to say that he's not on the same page with Jon Anderson. You know, they have different visions of what Yes should be at this point. And Steve Howe would just rather keep going with his current band and not get Jon involved. And I think it's very similar to what's going on with Styx. You know, Tommy Shaw doesn't want to work with Dennis. creatively. They're in two different places, and I don't see that ever happening. But I think the biggest thing going on here is control, okay? Tommy and JY, they control everything now. They don't have to deal with Dennis. Dennis can be a very headstrong person, even more so than Jon Anderson. You know, Dennis used to produce the Styx albums. You know, he oversaw a lot of things. Now Tommy and JY have that to themselves. They don't have to share it. They don't want to give it up. And I think that's a major, major part. Steve Howe, this is his band now. There's no Chris Squire. There's no Jon Anderson. Steve Howe can do whatever he wants. And if he brought Jon back into the fold, he would have to share a lot of the creativity and decision making. And I think that Steve is just like, fuck it. I just like being in my own band. And it's pretty sad that we have these guys alive and well for the most part, and they can't do something. This is what Jon had to say recently. It's been 50 years now. You think something has got to happen. To me, a great album has to be made. That's what I think. I don't know how it's going to be made, but the final Yes event should happen. I've talked to a couple of people about it, and they get it. I really want to do this. I've even written 8 songs for the record that I'm thinking would work well with a full orchestra and a choir. So I think that Jon Anderson talking about a Yes album with an orchestra and a choir doesn't really sit too well with Steve Howe. And certainly any talk of a final Yes event, the way that Jon spoke of, doesn't really serve Steve Howe very well, because he's planning on taking Yes as it is now into the future. And so putting any kind of capper on it is not in his best interest. And it's a shame that Anderson and Wakeman can't do a tour with Howe the way that they did with Rabin. Just get those 3 guys, have a couple of other, guy on bass, a really good drummer, and go out with a solid band and kill the classics. That would be great. When asked recently about getting back together with Steve Howe, possibly rejoining the current lineup of Yes, this is what Jon Anderson had to say. He said, "Steve knows that I'm very open, but he has his own pocket or position to take. I wouldn't go back in that band because I don't think they're that good. I've said it now. They're good, but they're not that good." Actually, I was pretty surprised at how candid Jon Anderson was about Steve Howe's band, talking about how they weren't all that great. And I feel the same way. I've been talking about this for years, and I think any true Yes fan feels the same way. Steve Howe and his band, they're a bit sloppy. Nothing compared to ARW, much tighter, with Lee Pomeroy on bass, Lou Molina on drums. They sounded great, and they did the classic stuff really, really well. Let me know what you think about any type of Yes reunion happening, whether you think it's even possible, if it's even worth it. You don't have Bruford, you don't have Chris Squire. Is there any point? Or should we just enjoy what we have? I think the last great Yes performance was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had Geddy Lee of Rush on bass. That was awesome. They sounded great. And it was probably the last chance that Alan White had to really play a song like Roundabout by himself. I don't think he can even do that now. So, and that's just 2017. A lot has changed in the past 3 years to the point where we don't even have Alan White that we can depend on now. So it's just, like I said, it's bittersweet what's going on with Yes. Yeah, it's just hard to believe that, a lot of these bands that we grew up with are just no longer with us, or at least no longer recognizable in the classic form that we once knew. Hard to believe that there's no more Rush. I just can't wrap my mind around that. And look what's going on with Yes. And Styx, they've been in disarray for many, many years. Van Halen, what's going on with them? Foreigner, don't even recognize these guys now. So remember the classics. Remember the great stuff that they've left for us. This is why we're music lovers, right? Let me know what you think. Drop your comments down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button too. And until next time, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon.